Hey, how's everybody doing tonight?
Great.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good? Thank you guys all for coming out. My name's Kevin Foster. And I'll just say at the start of the night that this is my first time doing it, so cut me a little slack. The guy who normally does it, TC Bell, is off running another one of these training sessions elsewhere in the state. I heard Colorado Springs, is that right? Foco, okay. So TC's off doing his own thing. I'm cutting my teeth here, so you know, we're gonna make this thing happen. If I miss anything, or if you've got a burning question that you discover that you haven't had a chance to get answered by the time we're done here, go ahead and, actually what I'll do now is everybody who's been here before, go ahead and raise your hands. Who's been here before? We got a few, okay. Thank you guys for coming back. And keep your hands up just for a moment. So those who are new can look around the room and find somebody who can help you out if you do have a burning question that you don't get answered tonight. I am going to take questions at the end, but what I want to do is try to get through it as quick as I can, especially since it's my first time doing it. And then we'll go ahead and take questions at the end. Hopefully we'll get everybody's burning questions addressed. I'm not necessarily going to have the answer to every single question because this is brand new to me too. But we're building a community here, right? So you came out not just to see and to get all this information, but also hopefully to meet some other Bernie supporters. And we'll make this happen. And we do this every week at Skylark at 6 p.m. Okay, again, my name's Kevin. And everybody's here because they want to see Bernie Sanders elected president. Is that why you're all here? Just make sure you're here for the right thing. Okay, good. So again, I mentioned my friend TC Bell is the guy who's normally doing this. He's off raising awareness elsewhere in the state. I want to say thank you to TC, even though he's not here with us. He's the guy who inspired me to suck it up and get up here on stage and help the movement out. So I want to say thanks to TC. Also want to say thanks to Robert. Where's Robert now? Anyways, Robert's the guy who helped me get the sound set up, and he's got our television set up so we can do some visuals tonight. Thank you to Robert. He's here every week as well with TC. And also shout out to Skylark Lounge. Thanks to our bartender Forrest over here. If you feel like getting a drink, please make sure you take care of your bartender tonight. And I guess since I'm a new face on this stage, and since a lot of new faces here in the crowd too, I guess it's appropriate to talk a little bit just for a moment about myself and why I'm here. Most of you probably know this already, but the Bernie Sanders campaign doesn't have any paid staffers here in Colorado. They don't have anybody on the ground who's getting a full-time paycheck. So we're all doing this in our free time. Every single person here is here doing this because they want to see Bernie elected. That's why I'm here. I work a full-time job too. And you know, the things about Bernie that really appeal to me, I sat down and made a list and it ended up getting too long, too fast. So I'll just name off a few. But I think that many of us have similar things that really appeal to us about Bernie. So I like Bernie Sanders because I want to end the police state. I like Bernie Sanders because I want to end the drug war. I like Bernie Sanders because I want to see everybody in America with a living wage and with guaranteed health insurance. I like Bernie Sanders because I want parents to be able to afford health care for or child care for their children when they're working full time. I like Bernie Sanders because I want to end the wars. And there's a whole lot more reasons, but hopefully some of those resonate with some of you.
It all starts with campaign finance reform.
Yes, very much so, and thank you. I forgot that in my nervousness. Campaign finance reform is the root, right? It's the root of all of these other problems that we have in the U.S. And a lot of folks, a lot of the average Joes on the street don't recognize that. But one of the strongest things about Bernie, one of the things that sets him apart from the rest of the field, even more so than a lot of the other progressive reforms that Bernie has in mind, is campaign finance reform. Because the way that things get gummed up in Washington is a direct result of how influence is bought and sold. And so we want to wipe the slate clean and start fresh. And Bernie has a plan to do that, and that's why he appeals to me. And thank you for bringing that up. So a little bit of outline, I guess, about what we're going to be doing tonight. We're just going to be talking about two main things. They're in the name of the title of the event: caucusing and canvassing. And can anybody, if you've never even heard of a caucus before tonight, raise your hand, don't be shy. Anybody? Okay, everybody's heard of a caucus, it looks like. Raise your hand if you've never been to a caucus, never participated. I'm one. So we got a lot of people who have never participated in a caucus, and that's why these meetings are so important. Probably most folks know what a caucus is, at least in the abstract, but you might not know the details, and you might not know exactly when and where to show up yet. And you might not know what you can do between now and the day of the caucuses to get Bernie elected. And so for those who aren't aware, next November is the presidential election. And we're going to have the election for president in Colorado and all around the country on the same day, obviously. But election day is not the most important day in Bernie's campaign. Not in Colorado. The most important day for everybody here in this room, everybody who's a resident of Colorado and wants to see Bernie Sanders elected president, the most important day for Bernie's campaign in Colorado is March 1st, 2016. And if you didn't know that, this is something you should write down. This is the most important thing you gotta know. March 1st, at 7 p.m., everybody in Colorado is gonna go out to their neighborhood caucus, which are gonna be held in schools, in municipal community buildings, in public areas, all around the state. And it's going to be a meeting with your neighbors, right? You're going to get together with a small number of other people just who live within a few blocks of where you are, and you're going to vote on who you think is the best presidential candidate. And we need everybody here to turn out. We need a whole lot more people than just the folks in this room to turn out for caucus. And we're going to be focusing on how we get there for the rest of the night. The other thing we're going to be talking about is canvassing. Canvassing is that thing that I'm guessing most folks know what it is, but maybe not so many have done it before. Raise your hand if you've never canvassed before. Okay, so we got a few. I actually went canvassing for the first time a few weeks ago myself, and I'm here to tell you that it's not as scary as it sounds. And we're going to talk about strategies and what we do in these canvas events, which we're going to be having a whole lot of between now and March. We're going to be talking about how we help Bernie win through our canvassing strategies. And then finally, we'll touch, we'll see how we're doing on time, but what I'd like to do is touch on just a few miscellaneous and other volunteering type questions that folks might have about other ways you can get involved between now and then. But the caucus is the most important thing to Bernie's campaign, and canvassing is the most important thing that we can do to help Bernie win the caucus. And I'll get more into that in a few minutes about why. But there's a lot of other things you can do too, right? So if you leave tonight saying, I don't care what that asshole said, I'm not going out there and knocking on doors of people that I don't know and getting the door slammed in my face by Donald Trump fans, right? That's a scary proposition. And some folks, no matter what you say, may not feel comfortable doing that, and that's okay too. There's a lot of other ways you can help Bernie's campaign, and we'll get into that more too. But let's just get started talking about the caucus system. So there's two primary ways that the Democratic and Republican parties choose their candidate, their nominee, for the presidential election in November. Come November, there's only going to be one candidate from the Democratic Party, that's Bernie Sanders, obviously. And there's only going to be one candidate from the Republican Party, okay? And the way that the parties decide who their nominee is going to be, it starts at the state level. So the Republican and the Democratic parties in all 50 states are going to have a process that starts early in the spring. Starts on, I think, February 1st. Is that right? Is that the first primary? So it starts early in February, and it goes all the way through summer. The Democratic National Convention is when it finally ends for the Democratic Party. That's in the summertime, next summer. And by that time, all 50 states will have selected their nominees, and then they'll have sent delegates to the National Democratic Convention. And those delegates will vote. And at the end of the day, we'll see Bernie Sanders on the ballot for November, right? So there's two primary methods that the parties use to select the candidates. One is called a primary. And I think most folks know what a primary is. It's just a vote. It's just like the presidential election, but it happens in February maybe, or maybe in March, or maybe in April for most states. The other way, which is a little bit more complicated, but as I'll describe to you in a few minutes, it's much more powerful for people like us, and it's going to allow us to give Bernie the win in Colorado. The caucus system is a much more participative form of selection. It's not just a vote. You can't just show up after work on March 1st and walk into a room by yourself and push a button on a screen and walk out and get a sticker that says, I participated. I did my civic duty. The caucus is more involved in that. And because it's more involved in that, the average person on the street is not going to show up. I guarantee you, pick 10 of your friends anywhere in Colorado, and I guarantee you, on average, 9 of them are not even going to know what's happening on March 1st. The vast majority of people in this state are not even going to bother showing up. And it's one of the most important things that you can do to exercise your voice in this democracy, in this state. Okay, so the caucus represents a huge opportunity for everybody here to speak your mind and actually have a say in who's going to be president. And what you do on March 1st, in terms of the power that you're exercising, it's orders of magnitude higher than somebody who shows up for a primary. And it's orders of magnitude higher, it's infinitely higher than the people who don't show up at all on March 1st, okay? So that's the most important thing you need to take away. This is how Barack Obama won the presidency. Barack Obama had an enormous grassroots effort that started at bars and in people's homes, just like we're doing tonight. And Barack Obama got everybody in the country who was paying attention in the winter, almost a year before the presidential election. He got all of these people to organize and to show up and to vote him in on caucus day. And that's how he won. And the future belongs to those who show up. So give yourselves a big round of applause just for being here tonight, because this is really important. I'm glad you're all here. So the caucus is a meeting. It's a meeting with your neighbors, and it starts at the precinct level. Raise your hand if you're not quite sure what a precinct is. Anybody? Okay, great. So a precinct, as it sounds like you all know, a precinct is the smallest unit of it's the smallest political boundary, I guess you could say, in the country, in this state, right? A precinct is about 2,000 to 4,000 people on average in Colorado. I live a couple miles north. I live on 13th and Washington. My precinct is 208. And it's just 2 blocks to my west, 2 blocks to my east, and 2 blocks to the south. That's it. It's 8 blocks total. And there's about 2,000 people, I think, who live in that area. And come March 1st, what I hope to do, and what I want all of you to make your goal, is that I'm going to show up on March 1st already knowing a couple of dozen people who are going to be in that room with me, because I'm going to go find those people and I'm going to make sure that they know they've got to show up between now and then. And that's how we win, right? Bernie doesn't have a paid staff in Colorado. He doesn't have anybody on the payroll who's going to go out and do the hard work of hustling all these average Joes on the street, John Q. Six-Pack, to come out and show up on March 1st. Hillary does not have volunteers who are doing that for her either. There isn't a meeting like this for Hillary Clinton anywhere in Denver tonight. Okay? Bernie has the people power. And so what we need to do between now and then is organize ourselves and efficiently reach out to everybody across the state of Colorado who supports Bernie and explain to them the importance of March 1st. Now here's the second thing you want to write down for tonight. This is really, really important thing number 2. New Year's, 1/1/2016, is the deadline for registering as a Democrat if you want to participate in the caucuses on March 1st. Write that down if you didn't know it already. New Year's, it's easy. Colorado has what's called a closed caucus system, and some states have this and some don't. It all varies by state. So what I'm telling you tonight isn't necessarily applicable to your friends in other states, but the important thing to know about our caucus system, in addition to the fact that it's on March 1st, is that we have a closed system, which means that you can't participate in the Democratic primary unless you're already a Democrat. And you can't participate in the Republican, not primary, but caucus. You can't participate in the Republican caucus unless you're already a Republican. And you can't just sign up the day you turn out either. So this is another layer of planning that we all have to recognize the importance of. You can't show up on March 1st unless you've been a Democrat already, registered as a Democrat, as a voter in the state of Colorado since New Year's. And that is, let's see, we've got 43 days between now and New Year's, so we don't have much time. And if you folks have been reading the news and you've been following the demographics that support Bernie Sanders, you probably know that so many of the people who support Bernie right now are first-time voters, maybe. Maybe they're young and this is the first time that they've been of age to vote in a presidential election. Or maybe there's someone who despises the party system and just just feels so indignant and so burnt out on the exclusive nature of the Democratic and Republican party systems that they just don't want to support either party. I have a ton of friends like that, and it's really important that we reach out to them too. Maybe it's somebody who has been a lifelong Republican, and they actually find that Bernie Sanders represents more of their views than the Republican candidates. And there are people like that, right? Believe it. My father's a Republican, and I put the odds at better than 50-50 that he registers as a Democrat and votes for Bernie Sanders. That's not the case for everybody, but long story short, we've got to reach out and we've got to find everybody in this state who supports Bernie and who isn't already registered as a Democrat, and we've got to get them registered as Democrats by New Year's. So those are the two pieces of information you've got to know. March 1st, January 1st. How do you get from your precinct level caucus to Bernie winning the national convention? I'm not going to go into this in too much detail because the way this works is it starts at the precinct level and then we have a series of other assemblies and conventions in the state of Colorado at the district level, at the county level, and then eventually at the state level. And each time, at each one of these meetings, we elect the people that we want to represent us going up to the next level. So when you go to your precinct level caucus, every precinct in the state has a set number of delegates that they send on to the next level. And it varies by county. Some counties go directly to the county level precinct. Some go from a district to a county. It varies depending on where you are in Colorado. I'm guessing most of the folks in here are in Denver. And like I said, we're not going to get into the details of that here because people's eyes tend to glaze over, and I don't want to make this longer than it needs to be. From a strategic standpoint, for everybody here right now who's learning about the process for the first time and who wants to know what you need to be doing in the coming weeks and months, those details don't matter. The only thing that matters is that you show up on March 1st and you bring everybody you possibly can from your precinct. But at the end of the precinct level caucus, there will be a few delegates who have been elected who are saying they're in favor of Bernie, maybe even one or two for Hillary, I don't know. But those folks are going to be going on to the next level. And so if that's something that you think you might be interested in, you want to do some research, you want to do some reading up on that between now and then, and you want to reach out and ask questions to folks who have participated in the precinct level caucuses before. And I'm not the best person to talk to about that because this coming March 1st caucus in Colorado will be the first time in my life that I've ever participated in a caucus, so I've got some learning to do too. But if that's something you want to do, give it some thought. There are other things you can do from an organization standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, that are little pieces of extra effort that you can put in now that will pay off in spades for the campaign later on. I'll tell you a little bit about one of those things right now before we move on to canvassing. What I want to talk about just for a moment is what's called PCPs, Precinct Committee Persons, is that right? Yeah. Precinct Committee Persons. So what a PCP is, and we're not talking about illicit drugs here, we're talking about the foot soldiers of government, we could call them. A PCP is someone who holds a title in their home precinct, in their home neighborhood. And the responsibilities, and it's a position within the Democratic Party. So if you want to become a PCP, you're actually part of the Democratic Party in the state of Colorado. And you have certain responsibilities that you need to uphold as a PCP. Here's the thing, there are so many precincts in Colorado, and there are so many positions that need to be filled at the precinct level, that the vast majority of precincts in Colorado have vacancies right now for PCPs. And PCPs are elected every year when we have our precinct level caucuses. So by the end of the day on March 1st, in addition to delegates going to the next level for Bernie, there's also going to be maybe 1 or 2 PCPs elected in your home precinct. And what we're encouraging folks to do who want to see Bernie elected president is we're encouraging you, if you really want to go that extra mile, think about becoming a PCP for your precinct. And you might be wondering, what advantage does that have? What can I do for Bernie that I can't already do by just showing up if I'm saddling myself with these responsibilities that maybe I'm not that interested in? What a PC has to do for the Democratic Party is to do a little bit of door knocking, which hopefully many of you here are going to be doing for Bernie already, but you've got to be doing some door knocking on behalf of the Democratic Party and just encouraging your neighbors to participate. And if you want to be a PCP, it is not appropriate to knock on all your neighbors' doors and say, hey, my name's Kevin, I'm the PCP, and I just want you to let you know that the caucuses are coming up on March 1st, and I hope you'll come out and support Bernie Sanders for president, because that's who I support. And if you're not, I mean, whatever. That's not the appropriate way to go about your PCP duties, right? So this is something that you need to take into consideration, and maybe some of you, maybe most of you, won't be interested in becoming a PCP. But if you do, what it gives you is the opportunity to meet your neighbors on more opportunities and get more chances to say hello and see somebody face to face in your home neighborhood. And maybe you can follow up with them later, or maybe you can reach out to them on your own time and help them turn out for Bernie as well. Okay? Let me see here. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Actually, you know what? Why don't I stop here and see if anybody's got any questions so far, just about the caucus system. We've still got some ground to cover in the way of canvassing, but it seems like a good time to stop for the caucus system. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah. I mainly have a comment about the PCPs.
Yep.
There's a radio guy named Tom Hartman, I think some of
Yep.
who he is. He has a YouTube video detailing how to become one and how important it is. He said the exact same thing as you, but he said that's very important to get in to become a PCP if you can.
That's
so anyone
awesome.
who wants some more information, go to YouTube, Tom Hartman, precinct committee person, and he'll go through it. He does say that a lot of Republicans are doing it. They come out to vote more.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
What's your name?
Gigi.
Gigi. And you've been here before, right?
Yeah.
You look familiar. Okay. So in case anybody didn't catch that, this is Gigi. And Gigi just filled me in on something that I didn't know, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this info along every time we do this from now on. Gigi says that if you check out Tom Hartman, and his name I think is T-H-O-M, is that right? Yep, so his first name is spelled T-H-O-M, last name Hartman, Hartmann, right?
Yep.
And so Tom Hartman is a pretty well-known, many of you may know who he is already, but he's a well-known progressive radio host, and he has a helpful YouTube video about becoming a PCP. And so I'm going to check that out as soon as I get home tonight. I hope some of you will too. And
I'll email you the link to it, and you can.
yeah, that'd be great. So Gigi's going to pass the link along, and then we'll go ahead and post that. We'll post it on the Facebook group if some of you found out about this event on Facebook. We'll get it out there.
If you want to listen to his show, Denver doesn't have progressive radio anymore. They got rid of it, so all you have is, Now, if you want to hear it, you just go to my hometown site, Chicago's progressivetalk.com, and then all the radio hosts are there. Luckily, Chicago still has their own progressive radio, although there's a few other places you can go to hear Tom's show. That's what I do every morning. I type in Chicago's Progressive Talk, listen live, and I can hear Tom. There'll be a rebroadcast of Tom tonight.
He's also on Free Speech TV
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Russia RT.
Yeah.
Okay. And Tom is also the guy who does he do, what is it, Brunch with Bernie or Breakfast
Yeah.
with Bernie?
He's
For
done it.
years.
Yeah.
He's done it for like 8
We
years.
get converted a few years ago.
Yeah, so another thing about Tom Hartman's show is this is the guy who's been having meetings and Q&A sessions with Bernie Sanders for years and years and years, which is just phenomenal. I mean, this guy's a real powerhouse in progressive America, which many of you already know probably, but it's good if you didn't. Tom Hartman, and we'll go ahead and I'm going to make a note to myself to post those links on the Facebook group, Colorado for Bernie. So if you're looking for somewhere to go for that link after this meeting, we'll try to get it up there pretty quick. And just to elaborate a little bit more on something Gigi reminded me of, the PCP positions throughout the country, those are how the Tea Party took over America after Obama took office, right? We all of us progressives turned out in real form. I mean, we knocked the establishment socks off in 2008 and got Obama into the White House. And then what happened after that? You know, Obamacare got gutted, right? The public option went away. Obama compromised with a whole bunch of insurance companies. And the Tea Partiers, who were really incensed at the direction that Obama wanted to go with his progressive policies, they came in and took over America in 2010. And they did that by turning up for their House district meetings. They did it by encouraging one another to become PCPs, which is a really low-level position. It might seem insignificant, but remember, these are the foot soldiers. So there are more PCPs in the Democratic Party than there are many other positions, and anybody can be a PCP. And so they recognize the value of that. And by taking over these PCP positions throughout the country, that's how the Tea Party strategically dominated U.S. politics ever since Obama has taken office. So that's something that we really need to respect for those of our friends and family who are Republicans or Tea Partiers who actually were part of that movement. You've got to respect the folks who actually showed up and did what they needed to do to get the policies they wanted passed. But we need to take a note out of their playbook, and we need to do one better this time around. And so I want to leave you with the importance of that. Let's see, any other questions about the caucus system that's run? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this sounds really basic, but what exactly happens? I show up for my caucus meeting and...
Thank you. and I apologize. What's your name?
Joan.
Joan, with an N? Okay, Joan asks, what actually happens at the caucus? And that's a great question and something I was totally going to cover. And so we'll do that right now. So when you turn up at your caucus, by the way, this reminds me of something else you should be writing down. Anybody know what time the caucus starts? 7 p.m. Can you show up at 7:01 and that's fine?
No.
No, you can't, right?
Come early.
I see a hand up, go ahead.
Check-in starts at 6:30, so you want to be there at
Yes.
6:30.
Yes, so check-in starts at 6:30, and I'll tell you something else. You're going to see more people participating in precinct-level caucus this year. If you've never been, it's going to blow your socks off. If you have been to a caucus before, unless maybe you were at Obama's in 2008 when they really knocked their socks off, you might be surprised at just how many people from your neighborhood show up. And if there's a line, or if the local PCP or person who's running your precinct level caucus has a hard time getting folks in the door, then you might be just out of luck if you show up. Even if you get there a few minutes before 7, if you're not signed in by 7, you're not going to be able to participate. And I see your hand up there. Go ahead.
That is correct. Typically when you vote in a primary, they'll let you in as long as you're in line by 7. That's no longer the case. You have to be in the building and checked in by 7, or you don't get to participate. Change the rule a little bit, so really aim for 6:30. Huh?
Is there only that half an hour window, 6:30 to 7? Yeah.
You can be in line before 6:30, but that's when they'll open up. That's when they'll start checking you in.
We should encourage people to get there.
You should be there by 6:30.
In case of
Yes.
traffic or something that could get, traffic jams or something.
Absolutely, and I agree completely. And your name again, we've met, and I
Joe.
apologize for getting Joe.
It's all right.
So Joe brought up a really good point, and that's what I was leading up to, is that with Bernie winning the presidency, which we're fast forwarding a few months here, but that's what's going to happen next year. But given the fact that we know that Bernie is going to win, we also know that we're going to be bringing all of our friends and neighbors to the caucus with us, and many of them will have never been there before. And when we arrive, we're probably going to see way more people than we've ever seen in caucuses, which are usually a very small neighborhood affair. But as Joe pointed out, that's not going to be the case this year. It was not the case when Barack Obama took over in 2008. And we can't count on everything going perfectly on caucus day. And because it's the single most important thing that you can do to get Bernie into office, show up early. And 6:30 probably ain't early enough. If there's any way you can get there earlier, I know TC, as a matter of fact, TC Bell, the guy who normally runs this session, TC recommended to those who were volunteering and organizing and helping round up their friends and family, he said, put it in now, take the whole day off, because it's going to be a big party anyways, right? This is going to be the biggest Democratic turnout, and it's going to be a face-to-face meeting with the other people in your neighborhood who are just as pumped as you about getting Bernie into office.
Oh,
And
we know
so-
where the caucuses are.
Okay, good question. So where are the caucuses? These locations have not been announced yet. They will be announced. I think there's a requirement for them to be announced a certain amount of time in advance. I believe it's a few weeks, but I'm not positive on that. If somebody wants to speak to that, go ahead.
Some of them have been announced already.
Okay.
Just look up DenverDemocrats.org.
Yes. So if you live in Denver, the place you want to go is DenverDemocrats.org. The Denver, is it county or city?
County.
So the Denver County Democrats are going to be posting locations for the caucuses on their website, and that's the place to go if you live around here. If you live outside of Denver County, does anybody know, are they going to be posted on the Colorado Dems website, or is it all county level? Can anybody speak to that? Not sure. Okay, so the most important thing about finding out where your caucus is, and this of course is if you don't live in Denver County, is to pay attention and stay involved between now and then. And Robert, you had your hand up. Did I already cover what you were going to say?
Almost. TC has even gone further in that. For the hardcore people, we're talking about, he announced it the other day, camp out for caucus. But we are going to get there the night before the caucus and camp out like we're camping out for an iPhone or something like that. But we're going to be camping out for the caucus. And if we can do that, precincts all over not only Denver, but the whole country, that's going to really make some news. We're going to get camera crews out there. So start thinking about that and getting that idea
It's bad
together.
weather, maybe we don't kick in for Torrento, Winnebago, so you can have a place.
Camp out
Okay,
for
so we're
caucus.
going to be camping for caucus. We're going to be tailgating for caucus. We're going to be getting kegs. So half facetious, right here. If this is something that sounds like fun to you and you think you can do it, then let's talk, okay? Let's do it. Let's make it happen, because that would be really phenomenal to see that happen all over Colorado. But the most important thing you can do is to be aware of the importance of showing up early. I think we've hit on that. And you had a question, sir.
There's also a Find My Precinct on the Denver Dems website.
Okay. And is it a button labeled Find My Precinct on Denver?
Find My
Okay.
Precinct, and it's fairly prominent. So
Great. So everybody caught that on the Denver Democrats website. There is a Find My Precinct button, and that's important. Go ahead.
One other thing, if you haven't participated and you want to get a little flavor of what's going on, every House district has a meeting in every House district in Denver, which has 40 precincts, and it meets every month. And you can go to that meeting and kind of get a little flavor for what's going on.
House District.
Thank you. And what's your name, sir?
My
Sorry.
name is Marty. I'm a co-captain in House District 9.
Marty from House District 9 brought up another really good point, and thank you, Marty, because I was going to forget that. Every House District in Colorado has monthly meetings. I live in House District 2. I'm going to be attending my House District's monthly meeting next Saturday. I know that House District 6 is the same day, and I don't know all the others, but they're scattered throughout the month. They're almost all weekends, right? Or are they all on weekends?
Saturday
Yeah.
morning.
Generally Saturday mornings.
What's the website to find out about this?
So if you want to go, so is it coloradodems.org or is it coloradodemocrats.org? Anybody?
Also at Denver Democrats.
Yeah, it's at Denver
Okay,
Democrats.
so Denver Democrats and Colorado Dems. And I'm not positive if it's Dems or Democrats, but if you Google for the Democratic Party where you live, you can find that stuff. And it's pretty prominently listed. And I've never been to a House District Democrat meeting before either. My first one is going to be next week, and I'm really excited about it because I'm going to get to meet all of the folks in this part of town who are active. And let me tell you something else, especially if you're a young person and this is your first time getting this involved in a campaign. If you show up for your House District meeting, you're going to meet a lot of folks who are going to be really thrilled that you just showed up. It doesn't matter if you're a Bernie person, a Hillary person, just show up and express how excited you are to be taking part in this process. And what you'll find is that there aren't a whole lot of us who actually take it that seriously. And so this is another really great opportunity to, one, show the political establishment and the folks who already know what's up how excited folks are for Bernie. Maybe not everybody realizes just how much movement and how much excitement there is on the ground here. And number two, it's a form of power. You actually have a chance to talk with people, exchange ideas, have a say in what's happening locally. And so I hope that everybody will go home and Google their House District tonight as well, and think about maybe attending some House District meetings. I know that there's a lot of effort among grassroots organizers for Bernie here in Colorado. I've seen a lot of Facebook posts and a lot of chatter on the internet about how much people want to see other Bernie supporters come out for these meetings. Because again, not everybody's doing this. It's a Saturday morning. You've probably got other plans, but think about it and look into that for now.
So what happens after 7 o'clock at the caucus?
Yes, so thank you. So you show up, and then we spend half an hour talking about how important it is to show up. Thank you. So after you show up, the very first thing that happens after people sign in and get signed into the meeting is you have a presidential preference poll. And the presidential preference poll is a public, it's not a secret ballot type of exercise. It's not a put something in a box kind of exercise. It's a you raise your hand for Bernie, or you raise your hand for Hillary, or maybe you raise your hand for Martin O'Malley, okay? And everybody at the precinct is going to pick a side. And it's something where, and someone who's participated before maybe can tell me, it sounds like you actually go into the room and you stand on one side of the room or the other. Is that right? Or is it done differently at each caucus?
It varies.
It varies. Okay.
You're going to raise your hand, you're going to stand on the other side of the room.
Typically you get in groups.
Yeah.
Right. So it is a public show of support. And what's important to know about that is that you can change your mind when you show up. And everybody in this room, I hope you're planning on caucusing for Bernie, and I hope you do not plan on changing your mind. But recognize that it's possible for folks who really want to exercise their ability to influence other people in their neighborhood. And this is powerful stuff, right? Neighbor to neighbor, face-to-face communication. This is how minds are changed. It's not changed by exchanging insults on Facebook. So the important thing to understand is that when you show up for your caucus, there might be some really diehard Hillary Clinton fans out there who say, come on, guys, is this your first time doing this? You've never been to a caucus before? Are you really going to throw your vote away on this guy, the septuagenarian, right? The guy who has no clue when it comes to gun control, right? The things that they love to say about Bernie. And there might be people who try to sway you. And that's something that's important to keep in mind as you go in. So don't let that happen to you. And we're going to get into this now in the next couple minutes. We'll get into the next segment, which is talking about canvassing and about the process of actually reaching out to your neighbors and meeting them between now and caucus. And one of the things that's powerful about grassroots organizing, and one of the ways that we're going to sweep Bernie into office, is the fact that we're going to be doing all this extra legwork between now and then to get our neighbors out to caucus with us. And one of the strengths of organizing that way is that you're going to have 24 brand new friends that you meet between now and then that are coming with you. And so you'll stand together strong and firm in your convictions that you want to see Bernie Sanders elected president. And maybe, just maybe, you can convince some Hillary folks who showed up that day that the movement is way stronger than they ever anticipated, and this guy actually has a chance of winning. And maybe it's better for them to stand with you, right? So that's the second part of the caucus. That's the presidential preference poll. And what happens from there is that every precinct has a set number of delegates that they're going to send up the food chain. And I believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's typically, it varies from precinct to precinct, and it's calculated based on the previous election's turnout, but it's weighted so that it's roughly proportional to the number of active voters in your precinct. And so most precincts are probably going to have, I want to say, between like 3 and 4, maybe 7, 8, 9. Are those the kind of numbers we're talking about? Okay, from those who've been here before. So there's going to be a set number of delegates that need to be elected that night. And the folks who come out to your precinct level caucus are going to be helping determine who goes to the next level. And every delegate that gets sent is going to be somebody who stands up that night and says, yeah, I'm caucusing for Bernie, or I'm caucusing for Hillary, or I'm caucusing for Martin O'Malley. Most of them, of course, are going to be caucusing for Bernie. And so the number of delegates for each candidate gets weighted by the number of people who attend the caucus who vote for their candidate. Now, there's one other little piece of information that I think is important to know from a strategic standpoint, and that is that if any of the presidential candidates who don't receive at least 15% of the votes at your precinct level caucus, they don't get any delegates. So this is like a threshold, right? If there's just, if 20 people show up to your precinct level caucus and only one of them votes for Martin O'Malley, that means Martin O'Malley doesn't get any delegates. And so there's a rounding process where the delegates get divvied up among the candidates that all have more than 15% of the presidential preference poll. And then if there's any remainders, they get divvied up based on the remainders. And there's a system for it that they have set up, and there's a instructional page on is it the Colorado Dems or the Denver Dems website that has a precinct level caucus sheet. Can somebody? Colorado. So, so if you go to Colorado Dems website, you're going to find a short little blurb about the precinct level caucus. And I'll be honest with you, on the website, on the web page itself, there isn't a whole lot more information than what I've already told you. It's pretty straightforward. It's written in plain English. It doesn't have every single rule for the caucuses on there. But if you go and look for the caucus how-to on the Colorado Dems website, at the very bottom of that page are a couple of links to PDFs. And one of them is the precinct level caucus rules. And so if you want to dive more into the nitty-gritty and understand exactly what to expect there, I would direct you to that page. And I wish I had written it down because I wish I could provide you with a URL, but it's pretty easy to find. You're looking for caucus information on the Colorado Dems website, and then pay attention at the bottom of the page, there's a couple of PDFs, and they include the precinct level caucus rules. And they talk about that process of divvying up the votes between the delegates. But The most important thing we need to understand as far as strategizing and getting Bernie elected is that when you come out for your caucus and you have that presidential preference poll, you're going to determine right then and there how many delegates go up the food chain. And if you can bring enough people so that Martin O'Malley and Hillary Clinton can't even snag 15% of the presidential preference poll, then you have locked your precinct down for Bernie Sanders. You've gotten all the delegates for Bernie Sanders. And that's what we're going to do across the state of Colorado. That's our goal here, is to sweep the caucuses. Okay? Let me see here. After the presidential preference poll, as I mentioned earlier, there's a PCP position, and if there's 2 PCPs per precinct, and if one or both positions are not filled, then they'll be replaced. If somebody's already serving as PCP, do they have the option to go on, or do they always have a vote to replace?
That's election.
Okay, so it's always an election. So there will be a PCP election regardless of the caucus. But as I mentioned a few minutes ago, not every PCP position is filled at the precinct level, and you can. And if there's a vacancy right now, you can contact your House District Chair and ask if you could serve as a PCP between now and then. I probably didn't make that clear a few minutes ago. But if there's a vacancy in your precinct right now, you can raise your hand and show up at your House District meeting and offer to step up and take over that role. Let's see, any other questions about caucusing? I know that it's a little helter-skelter here. I hope you're all following along okay. Michelle?
Do you mind if I make a couple of quick announcements?
Yeah, go for it. Michelle's got to run, so she's got some things to tell us.
Hi, if I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, I'm Michelle Hanley. I typically run something after TC does his great caucus and canvas training, where we sit down and we just roundtable different ways to help. A lot of times, everyone comes, they're high energy, they're ready to start working, but until we start hitting the door canvassing, there's a lot of things we can do between now and then. One thing, if you are not involved in voter registration drives, thank you. If you're not involved in voter registration drives, sign up right now to do that. It's a 45-minute online training session, and that allows you, through the Colorado Secretary of State's office, to officially register voters. Like Kevin pointed out, we have 43 days until the cutoff in order to participate in the caucus. That is not a lot of time, and Denver has some strict rules. We weren't able to do any voter registration drives because of the recent election. I'm waiting for final confirmation, but it looks like December 1st and 3rd, I'm going to be at the Auraria campus leading one of these voter registration drives. I'd encourage everyone to do the training, and once you have that training, you can get a bunch of volunteers, set up shop anywhere in town. Especially with the holidays coming, there's lots of events. There's lots of holiday events, there's lots of craft fairs, Winterfest, Denver Flea. You can be standing out in front of there with a clipboard, reaching key demographics, i.e. people under the age of 40, register them to vote, and then give them Bernie information. Also too, make sure that you are definitely involved with your House District leadership. And the really important reason is we need to get progressive candidates into our state offices as well as on the national level. If you think Obama's had a rough time of it, imagine how great of a time Bernie's going to have with the current Congress. It's really, really imperative that we get progressive leadership. And we do have some great people running in Denver, so it's really important to get involved with House leadership as well to make sure that people like Aaron are going to be on the ballot for people to vote. Nice thing about Denver is we're pretty left-leaning. Most people will blindly vote Democrat. If we can get our type of candidates, the progressive, truly liberal, left-leaning politicians on board, people will vote for them and they will get into office. Also too, if you haven't added me on Facebook yet, Michelle Hanley, Hanley, I'm happy to keep you up to date on anything I have going, and certainly next week I will have another roundtable discussion where we talk about different ways to flyer events and also do some other brainstorming on some other great voter registration drive opportunities. Thanks so much.
Can you repeat the email and how it's spelled?
Oh, sure thing. My last name is Hanley, Hanley.
What how's the first name spelled?
Michelle, Michele.
One out.
Yep. The proper French spelling.
Oh, so it's Michelle Hanley at what?
Oh, that's just my name if you want to add me on Facebook. If you want an email address, mhanley, Hanley, at mile high, HIGH, urban, URBAN, farming. That's .com. That's my business email. That's what I check most religiously. Okay, so thanks so much. I'm sorry to have to cut and run, but again, if anyone wants to stick around after the Caucus and Canvas training next week, happy to do so. The other thing I am working on is a quick little training spiel for people who are a little bit nervous about the canvassing. And I'm also going to have a brief little blurb that you can hand a non-native English speaker as well, just to introduce, and then you can hand over a foreign language flyer as well. Thanks so much. Thank you, Kevin.
And thank you, Michelle. So moving right along here, I appreciate you guys' patience. Like I said, it's my first time doing this. I was hoping we'd keep it close to an hour, and it's obvious that we're going to go a little bit over. But what I'd like to do now is go over the very basics of canvassing, just the bare bones essentials of what you need to know. And what I'll leave you with after that is that there are lots and lots of canvassing events happening already on behalf of Bernie's campaign throughout the Denver area especially, and that many of them are being put on by folks who are ready and raring to train folks who are just doing it for the first time. So we won't go too far into the details of canvassing except to get you what you need to know, the basics of it and the gist. And then we'll move from that into a Q&A session, and folks can cut out at that point if you feel like you've already had enough. That's great. And I hope you'll stick around and have a drink, and we'll have a free-form conversation and Q&A if there's demand for that. And then I'll put this mic down, and we'll keep hanging out and talking and meeting one another. So I'll just move right along. Is that cool with everybody?
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Sure.
I wasn't clear on at the caucus.
Yep.
Voting takes place to determine delegates? Yeah.
Yes.
Can you just clarify that again?
Sure. So what it's called is, it's not referred to strictly as a vote. It's called a presidential preference poll. And like I said, it's not a private, one person at a time thing. Most precincts, evidently from what I'm hearing, you actually stand on one side of the room or the other based on your preference for a presidential candidate. And then they count heads, and then delegates are elected on the basis of the numbers for each candidate. One thing to know about the delegates is that delegates can be elected and can say, I'm caucusing for Bernie, or I'm caucusing for Hillary, and they can say, I am a delegate for Hillary Clinton. In fact, they have to say which candidate they're for when they're elected. But delegates can change their mind on the way to the next level too, and they can then vote for somebody else. So it's a bit odd, but it's the democratic process at work. I think the intention there is that if somebody can do a good enough job of convincing a delegate to change their opinion, then that delegate's opinion then stands as changed. So it is a little bit funny. It's not as cut and dry as it might seem at first glance as it ought to be. So it's quite different from primaries. Go ahead, Gigi.
I had a question. When you
Yes.
check in, you said get there either early. Do they document to make sure you've registered already as a Democrat?
Yes.
Or
Oh, yeah,
you can't
absolutely.
just show up?
No, you can't just show up. Yeah. So your name will be checked to make sure that you're a registered voter and a registered Democrat. It's very important. That's what That's why we're trying to get everybody registered by New Year's.
Do they need to bring
But
in
they will
something?
check. That's a good question. You need to bring ID. Speak up, sir. I would assume so, but I haven't looked into it, so I can't say.
Bring it. Check it in your ID system.
Yeah.
So that's why we be there early, because you gotta go through and get checked,
And they should probably add that even though it's not required to bring ID, you should probably bring it just to
Can
make
we
sure.
move on? I'm sorry, this is dragging on forever. Can we move on to canvassing?
Yeah, we sure can.
Later. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so canvassing. You're going to come out to a canvassing event. For many of you, raise your hand if it'll be your first time canvassing this year. All right. So the gist of canvassing is, it has been proven time and time and time again that canvassing, the process of knocking on doors and speaking with your neighbors face to face, is the most effective way to increase voter turnout and even to change minds. Because more so than slinging insults on Facebook, more so than posting articles on Facebook, more so than arguing with your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving, knocking on your neighbors' doors and talking to them about the process and what's coming up is a proven and a very effective way to increase voter turnout, especially for insurgent campaigns like Bernie's, where nobody in the mainstream media or the establishment believes he can win. It's up to us to prove that he can, okay? So that's why canvassing is so important. And the way that we do it is that the Colorado campaign has actually just been granted van access. Raise your hand if you know what van is. A few folks. So for those who don't know, VAN stands for Voter Activation Network, and it's the name of a proprietary database that the Democratic Party and a lot of progressive campaigns use to target voters. So it's a database that has the names and addresses, and phone numbers, and a whole bunch more information too about registered voters. And so typically only a paid campaign would have access to VAN because it's a very powerful tool, but it's also very dangerous if you have a bunch of volunteers who maybe are doing it for the first time, maybe don't know what they're doing, getting access to it. And Bernie's campaign is different. Bernie's campaign in Colorado is different because the national campaign just came through town less than a month ago and saw how much grassroots organizing is already happening here in Colorado, and they were so blown away that they said, we've got to get these guys VAN so they can start canvassing proper. So we actually just received our VAN access, and one of the more dedicated volunteers in the Denver area who has experience working for paid campaigns before and is a VAN guru, she's setting up the access for that right now. So there's going to be a handful of volunteers around the state who have volunteer level access to VAN and can do things like log into the system online and generate what's called walk lists, which are just like it sounds. It's a list of names for you to walk your neighborhood. And typically they're broken up by the precinct level, so when you're going to go canvassing with some other people, you'll typically get a bunch of people together on maybe a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, maybe in an evening after work. Sometimes is really effective time to reach people. And you'll get people together, and you'll have your walk list, and you'll divvy it up, so give a few pages to each person, and everybody's got a list of names they're responsible for. And the list of names will be listed by the order that you go as you walk down one side of the street. And the list is going to have a certain amount of information for each registered voter or resident that is on the list. So it's going to have their name, their age, their gender, their party affiliation, so whether it's R for Republican, D for Democrat, L for Libertarian, G for Green, U for unaffiliated, maybe I'm missing one or two, but that's the majority. And it'll have, some of these lists might have information about their past participation in the caucus and voting process. And so what you'll do when you're caucusing, and if it's your first time doing it, you typically want to show up to a caucus, or sorry, not caucusing, canvassing, to a canvassing party with a friend, and you'll ideally get paired up with somebody who's done it before, and so somebody new and somebody who's done it before, and you go 2 by 2. And the reasons we do 2 by 2 when we're canvassing are for several reasons. One, because it's a little bit less intense for somebody who's never done it before, who's doing it for the first time. Another reason is just accountability, so that you don't get halfway through your walk list and get frustrated or meet some really angry, bitter Donald Trump person who tells you to F off, and you decide, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm going home. Hopefully, if you're going with a partner, you can support one another, take turns, and get the job done, get all those houses on your list done in the time that you're canvassing. But what do you actually do when you knock on a door when you're canvassing? That's what we're going to talk about next. When you knock on a door, you have the person's name on your list. If it's a single person living in that home, you'll just have one name. If it's more than one person living in the same household, a family, roommates, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, you're going to see names of each registered voter, and they're going to be separated by a dashed line on the list instead of by a solid line. So you can sort of see, if you look down the list, based on where the dashed lines are, you can see who's in the same household. And each name has the address printed, so you can verify that. But you'll have the name, you'll have a gender, and a voter affiliation. So you're not going into this process totally blind. You have some idea of whether the person's young or old. If they're a Democrat, you might feel a little bit more comfortable about that than if they're Republican. But everybody's different, and everybody's going to react differently to when you knock on their door. So the number one rule when you're canvassing is you're polite, you're courteous, you're friendly, you're smiling. And right now, we're not trying to cram Bernie Sanders down anybody's throats. We're not knocking on doors and trying to argue with folks or debate with them and convince them based on policy points that we're right and they're wrong and they should vote for Bernie. That's not how we do this. And maybe if you're like me, you kind of like doing that in your free time, just making your friends mad at you, talking politics all the time. But this isn't the place for that, so don't get that idea in your head. And if you're worried about confrontation, this should be a good thing because it tells you that confrontation is not the goal. In fact, if anybody's confrontational with you in the least, if somebody's angry and clearly doesn't want you to be there, it's okay. Somebody yells at you, that's fine. Thank you, sir. Have a good day. And if somebody is really confrontational and really doesn't want you to come back, what you write on that sheet is refused. That means the person does not want to see you again. And when you get back from your canvassing at the end of the day, you're going to turn that sheet in, the data gets entered, that person's name gets updated to refusal, and what that means is they won't show up for any future canvassers in your neighborhood. So you've done your part to make sure that this person doesn't get bothered anymore, which is probably really important to them, but it also makes the next canvasser's life easier. So that's the first thing. You're going to be talking to folks when you knock on the door. You're going to be asking them two things. The first thing is you're going to say, you're knocking on the door, and you're going to say, excuse me, sir, I'm a neighbor. I live over a few blocks over, wherever you live. I live here in Denver. And we're just walking the neighborhoods today, trying to find out how many of our neighbors are interested in Bernie Sanders. Have you heard of Bernie before? And then you wait and you let him respond. And you would think that at this point in the game, most folks know who Bernie Sanders is. And that's probably true here in Denver, but it's not necessarily the case for everybody. So you might come across somebody who says, Bernie who? What are you talking about? What are you trying to sell me? They don't even know who he is. And so we rate all of the voters that we talk to on a scale of 1 to 5. And for those who have never even heard of Bernie Sanders, they're always a 3. They're completely undecided as far as Bernie is concerned. They're neither for Bernie nor against him, obviously because they don't even know who he is. And that's the case whether they're a Republican or a Democrat or any other affiliation. They're a 3. If somebody opens up the door with a Bernie Sanders t-shirt on and says, holy cow, I've been waiting for you, I'm pumped up, thank you so much for coming to say hello to me, I love Bernie. They're a 1. If somebody's like, yeah, I've heard of him and I like him. Can he really win? Isn't Hillary going to win? Or, I know a little bit about him, but I'm still making up my mind. I like what he has to say. Those folks, you can call them a 2 if they're leaning Bernie, but not adamantly, firmly in Bernie's camp. You can put it down as a 2. If they open up the door and say, get off my porch, you communist, they're a 5. If they call Bernie a communist, if they call you a communist, don't ever talk to me again. Or if if all they want to talk to you about is how great Ben Carson is or Donald Trump is, those folks are 5s. If you talk to somebody who's a Hillary Clinton supporter, and if you talk to somebody who's a very strong Hillary Clinton supporter and indicates to you, however they respond in their own way, that there's no way in hell they're going to vote for Bernie because they're so much in favor of Hillary, they're a 5 too. Because we don't want to bother somebody who's clearly plugged in, clued in, and has made up their mind and is not interested in having their mind changed. They're a 5 too. If somebody says, yeah, I know who Bernie Sanders is, but they give you that body language or that snide remark or that comment that lets you know that they really aren't interested in Bernie, you can put them as a 4. So they're not like out and out refusal, but we also don't want to come back to their door either. So it's a 1 to 5 system. 1 is strong Bernie camp, 5 is never come back here again. You can write refused for that too. And then undecided is your 3s. And you want to let people talk to you when you knock on the door. You don't want to just get right to the point, ask them the question, write it down as fast as you can and get out. When you ask somebody for their opinion on a presidential candidate, 90% of the people you come across are going to want to talk, at least for a minute. And if they're a Bernie supporter, they're probably going to want to tell you how excited they are for Bernie. And you might already know that, but you're going to listen anyways, and you're going to be stoked that you got a chance to talk to these folks, and you're going to be a great audience to them for at least a couple of minutes. And say hello and welcome them to the fold and find out if they happen to be in your neighborhood. You can talk about the next volunteering event you're doing, and you can play that by ear. But don't just be trying to knock on doors so quick that you're missing out on opportunities to interact with people. And the same goes for people who hate Bernie Sanders. If they want to tell you why they hate Bernie, nod and listen, at least for a couple of minutes, okay? You don't want to start a confrontation by immediately conveying that body language that you don't care. And of course you've got more doors to knock on. I haven't come across anybody who's really wanted to talk my ear off, okay, for more than a minute or two. But if you do get somebody who just won't let up, it's okay to just back away slowly and wave and nod and eventually say, okay, have a good day, I won't be back. So that's the strategy. Let me see what else. If you knock on the door of a home with multiple residents, with an entire family or multiple voters listed, and you feel comfortable doing it, it's okay after you get the response from the first person on your list or whoever answers the door, it's okay to say, thank you very much, and could so-and-so come and talk to me next? Is there any chance that they're available? That's okay too. Because, just because 2 folks are married doesn't mean that they're going to vote the same way. And, I had a situation last weekend where I was knocking on doors and I came across a gentleman who was not rude, but he was curt. It was clear that he didn't want to speak to us. And we were a little bit nervous. It was clear that we were infringing on his enjoyment of his Sunday afternoon. But I decided to be brave and bold, and I said, okay, is there any chance I could talk to Janice, or whatever her name was, the gentleman's wife? And she came out, and we talked for like 10 minutes about Bernie Sanders. She was really excited. So that happens sometimes. So don't be afraid to ask for the other folks in the household. Obviously play it by ear, but our goal is to get as much information as we possibly can. Okay, so we've talked about the one thing, which is the 1 through 5. We ask them, have you heard of Bernie? Not are you voting for Bernie, not do you like Bernie, dislike him? Just ask, make it a neutral question, have you heard of Bernie? And then you get that 1 through 5 answer after they have a chance to respond. The other thing that we're going to do, and this is the other really important aspect of canvassing, is you're going to ask, oh, by the way, are you going to participate in the March 1st caucus? And if it's a Republican voter who doesn't plan on changing registration to vote for Bernie, then in truth we probably don't care a lot about the answer to that question. If it's a Hillary Clinton fan who says either yes, I'm going to participate in caucus, or no, I'm not, we are really interested in that person's question, in that person's response, because that person, if they're not going to attend the caucus, great, thank you, have a good day, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, I'll see you sometime. That's fine. You put down a letter N for no on caucus participation, and your job is done. If you talk to a Bernie Sanders supporter who just finished telling you how much they support Bernie Sanders, and then right after that they say, no, I'm not planning on participating in caucus, you need to spend an extra minute or two explaining to them what we've just talked about tonight, about how important it is to participate in caucus, and how if you think that showing up in November to vote for Bernie is all you have to do to make this political revolution happen, then it ain't going to happen. You've got to make that extra effort, show up for caucus. And you also have their voter registration information, right? So when you meet a Bernie person, you want to check the list, see if they're registered as a Democrat. You might meet a Republican who says they're a Bernie person. And if you saw that R on your list, you need to let them know, hey, I just saw that it looks like you're registered as a Republican. Is this information up to date? And if it is, and they're registered as a Republican, you've got to tell them the importance of registering as a Democrat by New Year's. Okay, I think it's a good time for questions, and there may be something I missed just like the last time around. So anybody got any questions specific to canvassing? Yes, sir.
What if you knock on the door and whoever's on your list doesn't answer?
Good question. NH, not home. So if you knock and nobody answers, just put not home.
No, if someone else does answer,
Yep.
they're not on the list.
Yes, okay. So there's a few different scenarios, and you'll probably run across all of them. One of the things that can happen is you've got your list from the VAN database, but the last time it was populated was when there was somebody else living there. And if that's the case, and you can ask, and most folks will know, right? Because sometimes you get mail for a previous tenant, and then you'll know at least the name of the person. So they might be able to say, oh yeah, that's the guy who lived here. I just moved here last year. And if that's the case, go ahead and offer to take their information if they're interested, and then you can at least go back, and whoever's doing the data entry will update that list. So you can go ahead and write in the person's name, and just write a short note, new tenant or whatever. His name's Bob, and the old person's name was Gene or whatever, and you can put that down. And if that person is registered as a Democrat or is registered to vote, period, their name should come across the next time the database is updated. But if it's not, and especially if they're a Bernie supporter, it's great to take that information down, because even if it doesn't make it into the shared database with the National Democratic Party, at least we can get that information for our campaign, for Bernie's campaign. And you can put down, this is so-and-so, and this is their name, first and last name, age, gender, whatever, and you can make a note and say, yeah, I talked to this person and they're a 1 or a 2 or a 4 or whatever. There's another incident or another situation that might arise is when you knock on the door and somebody answers who's not on your list, but the other people who they live with are. That might happen if you talk to somebody who's a young person who isn't registered to vote. Maybe they open the door. Maybe their parents are registered, but they aren't. And then you can kind of play it by ear, right? Like if you meet a young person who tells you that, yeah, I just turned 18 and I'm going to register to vote and I like Bernie Sanders, well, you want to make sure you get that person's information. Go ahead and take a note, jot it down, and then the folks who are entering the data can do what they need to with it. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Gigi.
If nobody answers the door, should you leave a door knocker?
That's a good question. So you might hear different things depending on who you canvass with if you go with a group that's already setting up an event. But Gigi's question was about leaving a door knocker, like leaving some literature behind. Yeah, so if you're canvassing and you've got pamphlets or flyers for Bernie, oh, and that reminds me, I'm going to go ahead and pass this around too. Wish I'd thought of this earlier. This is a flyer. We've only got one copy. I wish we had more. But this is a flyer that some volunteers in the state put together that's a really nice infographic about caucusing. And so it has all of the pertinent details that we just talked about tonight. And it's something that you can hand to somebody when you're at their door. So if you're going canvassing and you want to bring something along with you, I can get you the information on where you can get that PDF if that's something you want to get a hold of. But to address so a volunteer in Colorado made it. They posted about it, I know, on the Colorado for Bernie Facebook page, and on at least a couple of places on Facebook. It's probably up on Reddit too, but we've got a link. It's like a tiny URL. Is it Caucus 101?
Well,
I think it is.
it's definitely on Colorado for Bernie Facebook, or Colorado for Bernie Sanders now.
So I'm just gonna say it out loud because I'm pretty sure I remember the link. So if anybody wants to go ahead and research this on their phone right now, I'll just give you a quick URL. It's tinyurl.com /Caucus 101, Caucus 101, all one word. Check that URL. I didn't see if anybody pulled their phone out, but if anybody wants to check it, I think you'll find that PDF there. And if not, we'll repost that link on Colorado for Bernie's Facebook page after tonight, so we can get that up there. But to address your question about the literature, and I went on a tangent there. With literature, you don't want to leave Bernie Sanders literature in a mailbox. Mailboxes are sacred territory.
It's illegal too.
It's illegal, yes. It's illegal, and even though you might think it seems silly, like, just don't do it. Don't do it at all, because
Not even a mail slot.
some people will get very upset about it, and even if they don't, it is strictly illegal. Mail slots count as mailboxes too, so if it's a slot and it says U.S. mail, absolutely not. Best thing to do, take flyers and pamphlets with you with information about Bernie. Absolutely do leave something about Bernie Sanders if nobody answers the door and they're not home. Just don't leave it in the mailbox. Leave it, tuck it into their door, on the front porch, whatever makes sense for that residence. Go ahead.
In the past, we've brought rubber bands and scotch tape, and you could
Oh, yeah.
lightly tape it to the doorknob, that's why we call them door knockers.
Okay.
So where you're not putting it in the slot of the mailbox, for sure.
Awesome, yes, a great idea. So if you want to go the extra mile, just bring some rubber bands and scotch tape with you when you're canvassing. That's a great idea. And I'm going to do that next time. Any other questions? Yeah, Marty.
So are the canvas organizers providing any flyers or material, or do the individuals have to bring their own?
Good question. So this will depend on the organizer. I think that most people who are doing publicly advertised canvassing parties probably will, but if they don't, they'll say. So like, for example, the one I went to this weekend, the listing, and I'll get into where the listings are in just a moment, but the listing said, you know, I've got this much material. If anybody would like to print a few extra flyers and bring them with them, that would really help me out, but I've got the clipboards and the pens and the checklists. So I think if you're going to an organized event, check with the organizer. If they didn't put it up on the listing, ask them that question, and hopefully you'll get that answer. And by the way, when I'm talking about events and I'm talking about stuff for Bernie Sanders, if anybody hasn't been there yet, it's berniesanders.com/events is the place you want to go for everything Bernie related in the entire country, not just here in Colorado. But anybody who wants to post an event on Bernie's website can do so, and there are tons of events happening every day all over Colorado. And if you want to organize and do your own event, it's very easy to do. You just create an account, you put a listing up there, the national campaign will approve it. It usually takes less than a day to turn around, and then it'll be listed. And if they go to berniesanders.com/events, there will be a map with little pins showing where every event is being held, and you can just find what's happening in your area, and then just click on them. It'll have the date, the time, the location, all the notes. And so if you're looking to get involved with canvassing, just look for canvas parties. Robert?
Another thing to look for is berniesanders.com/toolkit, and there you can find PDFs for flyering. Now, this flyer is so full of information, it's not really good for flyering per se, but it's great to leave at the door, like when you're canvassing and everything. It's just loaded with information. And if you also have Acrobat Pro, you can actually edit these PDFs flyers to put in your own event and your own little bit of wording. But berniesanders.com/toolkit is right there for you.
So berniesanders.com/toolkit. I know I've seen other links too, but definitely if you Google Bernie Sanders Toolkit, that'll come up. And one thing I want to make note of, because it's important from a legal perspective, is that if you are interested in doing your own literature, your own materials, your own flyers, and tons and tons and tons of volunteers all over the country have been doing that, like for example this Caucus PDF that we just passed around, the one thing that's very important to know is you cannot use official Bernie Sanders logos on any of your materials. If it's generated by a volunteer, it needs to be clear to anyone who sees it that it's not affiliated with the Bernie Sanders campaign. So you can't use their official logo no matter what. And it's not a bad idea to just put a note at the bottom of the page that says, made by volunteers, not by the official Bernie Sanders campaign, just so there's no question. Yeah, go ahead.
And the second source for toolkits is Bernie Feeltheburn.org, that one.
Feeltheburn.org.
The
Excellent.
The
Feel the Burn, as in BERN.org. And that's a volunteer-run site. That's a completely volunteer-run site, so the flyers and the information available there are all not officially affiliated with the campaign, but the campaign does know about the website. And go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I'm just gonna mention, just recently, the national campaign finally said, yes, this is like legitimate stuff here, and they kind of endorsed it. You know?
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. So the campaign has sort of endorsed it, if you want to say. They're aware of it, and they're pointing all of their volunteers to feeltheburn.org because they've seen what's up there, and they're already happy with the quality as far as, the information being correct and formatting, and it looks professional and all that. So by the way, feeltheburn.org, great resource to send anybody you talk to who doesn't know much about burning, because even more so than Bernie's own website, feeltheburn.org has an exhaustively referenced list of Bernie's policy positions on every single policy and every single topic under the sun that Bernie's ever expressed an opinion on. It's on feeltheburn.org. So that's a great resource just for somebody who wants to do research.
Handing out literature in cafes and bars from either feeltheburn.org.
Yeah, that's a great.
.com in terms of policy flyers. Is that?
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.
I'll be back.
Okay. So great question, and that's actually a good lead-in to talking about more general volunteering type stuff. But just to make a clean break, does anybody else have any thoughts or questions specifically about canvassing? And then I'll go on to flyering and that kind of stuff. Anybody? Okay. So, sorry, Gigi. Go ahead.
So when you're completely done, you turn it over,
Yeah.
to the, and what do they do with it exactly?
What they do with it is they scan them first. All the data sheets, sign-in sheets for events, and in the case of canvassing, we're talking about those canvas info sheets. Those get scanned and they get emailed to a central team. And I can't tell you exactly who or where that central team is yet, but maybe Robert can.
Well, essentially what we're trying to do is get everybody to start using minivan on their phones, and there won't be even any paper where you put all this into minivan, and then it will go to Team Bernie, and then it will come right back to us directly.
Yes, and just to build on that, what Robert's talking about is a phone app. It's called Minivan, which is to distinguish it from just van, which is the name of the database. Minivan is an app that volunteers can use when they're canvassing. But I will tell you this, I don't know for sure if or when we're going to start using Minivan in Colorado. And the reason is because I met with Risa and TC last week, and what Risa said is that the problem with Minivan is that if one of your volunteers starts entering data and they get halfway down the block and then their phone dies, none of that data has been uploaded. And I'm an engineer by trade, so I can't for the life of me understand why anybody would design an app that doesn't just upload routinely so you don't have that risk. But for some reason, apparently that's how it works. And so what I was told by Risa, who is our Colorado van guru, is that for the time being, we're not going to be using that app. So for the time being, all of our data entry will be on sheets. And so I wanted to just clarify on that while I had the chance. And then to address your question about scanning them, there are a handful of folks who are organizing and doing data entry and getting trained on van, because you've got to type in the information in a certain way and tick the right boxes and all that when you're entering it into the main database. And they want to restrict that so there's a manageable number of people statewide who are doing it. And that's not because it's an exclusive type thing where they don't want folks getting involved. It's more about maintaining integrity of the data, because the national campaign, when they do send a paid staffer here next year, early next year most likely, they basically want somebody to hand the reins to them and have everything all ready to go. So what they're trying to do on the organizer level is have a limited number of people who have that access, and they're gradually going to have point people within every House district across the state who are designated like, okay, I'm running a canvas party, this is the person I send my van to. And there are people doing canvas parties already doing that, but I think it's just a very small number of people in Denver who are doing the data entry right now. And that number of people is going to expand rapidly, probably starting next week. Does that address your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Robert?
Now, as far as scanning goes, if anybody's doing events and stuff like that, doing sign-in sheets and stuff, where it's going to be scanned and sent in to Team Bernie or to us, if at all possible, find somebody who can do this scanning with a means that they know how to scan, where they can scan at 300 DPI.
300 DPI.
And also, if they can use Acrobat Pro to edit it as they scan it, then it becomes editable, readable text. And if you all can't do that, if you can get the scans, get us the sheets, I can scan them, or one of the other gang.
Okay, so 300 DPI is the scanning resolution. That's important if you are going to be helping out with getting the data back. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just recommend, like, I brought my sheets from Saturday's Canvas tonight. I'm not going to try and scan them. Just bring, if you run a Canvas event, just bring your sheets to, maybe we'll find them out. You can always bring them here. Someone here will be connected. Robert will be here. TC will be here.
If you properly label them, I will scan them for you.
Right.
And
just real quick, if when you run a canvassing event, have sign-in sheet. Make sure everyone who comes signs in, just like everyone signed in tonight, even though you've probably already signed up before. Do it again. Do it every single time. The campaign wants to see that sign-in sheet, and put yourself down as the organizer, and put the date and what you did.
Yes, so that's a very good point. And if you're running an event, sign-in sheets are really important. Excuse me. I'm going to lose my voice here soon. That's super important. The reason I didn't cover that, not because it isn't important, but because okay, so we're an hour and a half in, and the things that I wanted to get focused on tonight were to focus mainly on the first-timers here and get everybody plugged in on what you need to do for Caucus, what you need to do when you go out canvassing for the first time. And I hope, and we're going to talk about more volunteering stuff now for anybody who still hasn't gotten sick of it. But what I hope is that everybody who gets involved will be interested in hosting their own events, and we'll do that. And there's a bunch of other stuff that that is important for that, and sometimes it feels like we just don't have enough time to get all the information out in one thing. But yes, if you're going to host an event, print some sign-in sheets. You can find those on the Bernie Sanders website at the Toolkit. The Toolkit has flyers, it has sign-in sheets, it has a whole bunch of informational brochures and how-tos about running your own events. And just to transition into your question, sir, and what's your name, by the way?
Eric.
Eric. So Eric was asking about flyering in public places. And yes, absolutely, that is a huge effort that needs to be ongoing constantly from now until November. And that's a really easy way to get the word out about Bernie. It is just as effective as canvassing for the people who are walking by you, and it's a little bit easier for a lot of people who are a little bit hesitant about knocking on doors. So flyering is just setting up, just getting some volunteers out in a public place anywhere you want to in Colorado, and just stopping people on the street politely and handing them a flyer. And there's a great resource on the Bernie Sanders Toolkit, or just on berniesanders.com. Do a little bit of looking for it, but there's a great resource on how to set up a flyering event that has some good tips about like little things like how you interact with people so you don't piss them off too much, things like that, which are super important.
Is there one flyer that delineates Bernie Sanders' policy platform?
Yes, so the official campaign flyer is the one you want. They have a copy in black and white and in color, and it's two-sided, it's very information dense. It's got a letter, like a dear citizen, this is me, Bernie, this is what I'm about. And it's got like a short letter from him that's signed, and then it's got bullet point lists of all these other things that he believes in. That's a great resource. That's his official campaign flyer, and that's at berniesanders.com/toolkit. And then also fieldofburn.org, there's a whole bunch more flyers. And you can go nuts on flyers if you want. Like fieldofburn.org has like a dozen individual flyers about individual issues if you really want to zero in on your target audience. So there's a whole lot of resources out there for that. Go ahead, Gigi.
When you're doing it, print a few in Spanish, everybody. You might run into somebody, so have a few in your pocket in Spanish.
Yep. Having a few in Spanish is a great idea. I don't want this party to be over, but I also feel like an hour and a half is already a little bit too much for somebody to be on stage running the whole night. So if anybody has any questions any closing questions that you have thought of that might be applicable to most folks in the room, please raise your hand now. And otherwise, what I'd like to propose is I'll put the mic down, and I hope some or many of you will stick around and do some more chatting. Again, raise your hand if you've been here before and you can help answer questions. So everybody who's got their hands up right now has some level of involvement in past volunteering efforts. And so what I hope is that about at least half of us will stick around for a few more minutes and mingle a little bit and get some more questions answered. Yeah.
Say your name again.
Yes, my name is Kevin Foster, and you can find me on Facebook, Kevin Foster. I should be public. There's a photo of me in a dark room with a silly beard, holding a beer, jamming out to some music. Yeah, you sure can email me. My first name is Kevin, and it's Kevin, and then the letters R as in Romeo, S as in Sierra, E as in Echo, Kevin RSE @gmail.com. That's my email address. Feel free to hit me up there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming, guys.